What if the secret to success wasn't just talent or hard work, but unshakable confidence? Welcome to Grasp Confidence, the podcast where visionary thought leaders, speakers, and entrepreneurs unlock the mindset and strategies for lasting success. I'm your host, Tara LaFon Gooch, CEO, two-time best-selling author, and international TEDx speaker, and I can't wait to help you step into the most powerful version of yourself. Let's dive in. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Grasp Confidence Podcast. I am your host, Tara LaFon Gooch, and today we are talking about all things TEDx. So you want to be a TEDx speaker? I hear this a lot. I hear it a lot from our listeners. I hear it from a lot from people on social media. They reach out to me. They want to know what it takes. What will it take for me to get on that stage? What do they expect? Can I even do this? So today I thought I would field some of those questions from our listeners from someone who has done it, Nia Luckey. Nia, I had the pleasure of working with you from conception to the completion line on your TEDx journey. And it was such a powerful journey. I thought I would be remiss if I didn't invite you back on this podcast because we've done one interview before. But that was before you became a TEDx speaker. So I thought it would be interesting to invite you back on the show so that you could take us through this whole journey and process of what it takes to become a TEDx speaker. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me again, Tara. But yes, it's from inception, or even just the idea of you recommending like, hey, have you thought about doing this, to taking the stage to now. What a journey. And so thank you for inviting me back, and let's dive into a conversation about it for your listeners.
It's exciting, right? And I remember we had a phone call and I was at my mom's house. She lives right across the street from me. I was picking up my daughter from the quote unquote babysitter, right? And I called you and I was like, we're doing this. We're doing this. This is happening, right? I had just recently become a TEDx curator for TEDx Sugar Creek Women in Charlotte. And we had been working together, for a little while before then. And then this happened in my life. And you were like the first person that I said, okay, Nia, you've got to be on this stage, because I knew, right? I knew your story. I knew your background. I knew your idea. And I knew you had a lot to share with the world. What did it feel like to get that call from me that it was like, okay, Nia, it's time. We got to do this.
It was surreal. So just to be a little transparent with your listeners, life has a way of blessing us when we're going through some trying times. So to receive that call during the week of like a family loss was huge, but then also very pinch me, like, oh my goodness, it's like a roller coaster. Like we're going up, we're going up, we're going up. And that phone call was us reaching like the top, and you're like, guess what? We're doing this. And I was like, oh my God, we're doing this. So I immediately told my dad. He was the only person outside of my husband that knew I was doing this, or thinking about doing this, right? Because there was an idea up into that phone call when you were like, no, I want you to submit, a video application for minutes of your idea. And I was like, oh goodness. So immediately flew home from New York and came into this office and recorded a video. And what I've learned about that is that you have to be okay with the pivot too. So it was great being seen and so exciting that it was happening, but to have flexibility in the idea and be so familiar with what your message is, that's probably the gem I want to share with your audience, right? So because the narrative doesn't have to be fixed, and it could take different shapes and different paths. It's just how you look at the message and how you want to frame it for your audience, so that it can drive the largest impact. Because to me, that's what TEDx was about. You start with the innovative idea, and then it's how do you broadcast that much wider than self so that it can bring impact to those communities.
So well said. So much to unpack there too. And what I heard as well between the lines is that it's kind of going from being known in your industry, which you are. You're in the top of your field, right? In cybersecurity, in tech, which is something that I always joke with you I know nothing about, right? It's not my wheelhouse. It's not my wheelhouse. Um but it's about going from being known within your industry to being known globally.
Yeah, that's big.
That's different. And I don't know if a lot of people really understand that, like what it means to unwrap that. But that's what the TEDx stage is. It's a stage. It goes on YouTube. It's forever available. It's evergreen. People can search it in any time. And it's a global platform, right?
That is correct. And so what I love about it though is it has been a consistent exercise in regrasping that confidence and starting with gratitude to help
Ooh.
quell anxiety, because the visibility of it all can get a bit intimidating and overwhelming. Um, so for me, it's a daily practice of gratitude if I'm feeling anxious about being seen. Um, and just being grateful for opportunities because there will be no, if you're, as long as the TEDx goes well and you've prepped and you didn't shotgun Betty the approach,
I like that.
more offers will follow, right? Has been my experience. And I think for a lot of the ladies that took the stage with me that day, and in different ways, and you're better prepared to walk through those doors, but then remind yourself, be grateful. Know you're walking through that door because that opportunity presented itself to you. You are worthy, right? And that audience is worthy to receive your message. And that's ooh, chills. Um, so that's been a little bit of the experience for me. And every talk I've given since May has been in that spirit is okay. The door is now open. A lot of it has been aligned to the idea of the trust protocol, which I think is massive. The idea that within, I don't even think 3 months, I had a book offer through a publishing house. It's when you let the expectations go and you're doing the talk for more than just yourself and you're letting go of ego, just the blessings and kind of the spaces you'll be invited to really start to show themselves.
Not long ago, I was a corporate sales director, unknown, overlooked, no network, and unfulfilled. But when I discovered the power of personal branding, storytelling, and confidence, everything changed. I went from being invisible to a 2-time best-selling author, international TEDx speaker, and top global podcast host, reaching thousands every year. And I want the same transformation for you to be seen, heard, and recognized as the thought leader you truly are. From TEDx stages to top podcasts and even TV segments, I help entrepreneurs, authors, and speakers amplify their message and build unshakable confidence. Visit bestbranding.solutions and let's build your dream together. Yes, this is something else I get asked a lot. Can I sell on stage? Not this one, folks. Not this one, right? This is a stage for extreme service. And if you're ready to add a lot of value and shape the world in your own way through your own purpose and your own message and idea, this is the stage for you. But if you're looking to sell books, if you're looking to grow your coaching business, if you're looking to grow your brand, it's probably not going to work because that's a kind of a self-centered approach. Now, these things happen as a byproduct of you just delivering a great TEDx talk and you showing up as a consummate professional, right? So I think if you prepare, if you deliver a great talk, if you write a good talk, if you practice well, if you have a mindset, it sounds like too, what you're talking about, of one of just gratitude and service, I think the success will be the byproduct of that, right?
That has been my experience. And along with that, like just the discipline to rehearse to like the
Yeah.
let go of memorization. That's the one thing. If you were to ask me what pro tip to share with anybody that's wanting to take that stage, don't memorize it. Make it a conversation between friends. So you see how, Tara and I were just having a conversation right now. That's how it should be with your audience. And I understand anxiety. I understand nerves. During our rehearsal, I had a full blown panic attack, and it was okay because of the people who surrounded me. And it was rehearsal, right? So just let go of the perfection of it and focus on the message.
Mm.
But it is definitely rooted in, what are you doing this for? I did not do it for follower account. I didn't do it for YouTube likes and interactions and reshares. Now I could, and use that as like a bit of an accelerator in 2026, maybe. For me, it was more about putting a voice to what others that I surround myself in tech with, what we talk about when we go to dinner. And we talk about trust a lot. And so I knew I had an idea. But then it was, is it innovative? Right? I didn't get on that dot to sell. I have nothing to sell you other than an innovative approach rooted in concepts that are highly relatable. And then hopefully a few stories that helped, take the tech out of the TED Talk, if you will. But that was the approach because it was beyond self.
I love that. A conversation. It's great because, there's never a time when I'm not helping somebody in some aspect of TEDx, right? I've got a couple of people who recently got accepted into TEDx. I've got somebody who is at stage 2 coming this weekend for in-person rehearsal. I have somebody else who's applying. I myself am preparing for my second one. So it's like something that's always in my brain is this TEDx, TEDx, TEDx. And every time I help someone else or go through it again myself, I learn a different level of what this is. And for me, it's conversational. Like you said, it's distilling,
Mm.
taking that one single idea, which most people come to me and they have, I think, I worked with Amna Shabir
Mhm.
on her TEDx as well. And she said she came to me with a 60-minute keynote and we condensed it down to 10 minutes. That's pretty common, right? We have a lot to say as speakers. We have a lot of value to add, but it's about making it super authentic to you, kind of that conversational style, like you were saying, based on story, but also centered around that one distilled singular idea that you can use to transform somebody else's life or business. It's such a interesting process because it really makes you a better speaker. Don't you feel like a better speaker after this whole process?
I do. And actually, what I think is interesting about what you just said with Amna is I think it was very similar when I first sent you my draft. You were like, Nia, this could be a keynote, but this is 10x. And I'm like, okay, great. What does that mean? um, and the joy in that though, and being able to calibrate is that the trust protocol will be a keynote next year in Chicago. So it's happening. But to the point of TED and that you've got to get the message across in an impactful way, concisely, which I know for somebody like myself is a bit of a struggle point. We're very thorough in cybersecurity. So learning that less is more actually ended up showcasing itself when I was invited to Louisville to talk this year. And I went with a more traditional approach, more academic approach, and it wasn't as well received. I've since pivoted back to the TEDx approach, which is okay, here's a few slides, but let's have a conversation. So much more engagement, so much more Q&A, so much more follow-up after the speaking engagements and network growth. So, because tech is really easy to get dry, right? And you can lose your audience. So, using kind of the coaching and the tips and all that train up for the 6 months that we spent together on that, it's actually shifted how I talk now. And I was actually thanked. So this week, had the pleasure of speaking for Isaka Charlotte at Great Wolf Lodge. And the other ladies in the room, they were like, thank you so much for a talk that wasn't more dry cybersecurity technical.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about trust. We're making it human. We're taking the tech out of it. And we're saying, hey, I see you and I want to trust you. How do we build that within our teams and move forward together? So definitely has been a learning journey, but I would say that when your focus is engagement and sharing that message, just get out of the academia of it all. Get out of the memorization of it all. And you may even hit a point on stage, like not for TED specifically, but if you are in public speaking, where you're like, you get to a slide and you're like, oh, we already talked about that. Skip. But that's okay, right? A good kind of gauge on how you did is Q&A and post engagement. So I would say everything from the TED Talk and in terms of prep and practice has really shaped how I'm going into 2026 and how I've finished out 2025 from a speaker's perspective.
That's so amazing. And, I want to make sure everybody heard you. You got a book deal.
Yeah, no, that's happening.
Okay. Right. Because I think that's totally worth repeating on a lot of levels. And, it was one success after another. But, this is important. I recently had a podcast conversation about just the power of championing others. I remember what it was like when somebody looked me in my eye and said, that could be a TEDx talk. Have you ever thought about that? And at the point, I hadn't. And then you and I had a conversation. Nia, it's time. You're ready, right? Even if you didn't think you were ready, I knew you were ready, right? I knew you were ready and had all this potential. And I was like, it's time. We're doing this. We're doing the thing. Then you did the thing. You stepped out in a lot of courage and bravery, totally unfamiliar territory to you. You did a TEDx, right? It was scary. And then because you stepped out in bravery, because you believed in yourself, because you did something hard, then you got a book deal. And it
Yeah.
wasn't even something you were planning on. It was a result of the action you had already taken and the beliefs that you were laying down as a foundation for the new person you're becoming, right?
That's exactly right. I think we got off the dot and we had lunch. And I was like, okay, so right, we could publish this. This is a good idea. And we were discussing whether we wanted to self-publish or if we wanted to try and go for a publisher, what that would look like. And then before I blink, an offer was in my email and I'm like, you've got to be kidding. How couldn't he even have planned that? Because I think privately there were only 5 of you that knew that might be happening. But it is. And I think that's kind of the reward of stepping into your purpose and being aligned with what you're kind of called to do. Um, a big thing in thought leadership is that is the common understanding that we're better together. And I don't command more authority because I have more knowledge. It's shared knowledge. And I think stepping into that was the biggest blessing of all, mainly because the output has just been fantastic. We're in the middle of submitting to editing right now, which was another 6-month ramp, right? So like everything I do that's big, whether it's a half marathon, whether it's what was that? So I did it's not a Tough Mudder. I'm getting stuck on a Spartan race. So
Oh,
Spartan race
yeah.
was 6 months, half marathon was 6 months, TEDx prep was 6 months, book drafting was 6 months. So everything I've found fruitful for my life that was really anchored and beyond self has just paid dividends. So I always try and lean in. But I also try and not future trip what that looks like because it could be different for everyone. But believing in yourself is important. And I know for me, sometimes it takes somebody else seeing you and understanding what you're capable of in order for you to be able to look back in that mirror and say, okay, I hadn't considered that. Let's do it. Let's at least try.
And
Right?
you got in the first TEDx event you applied to.
No, that's true. That's
I'm
very
not
true.
trying
It's
to brag
very
on you, but it's true. The very first one, I knew it. I had a feeling. It was like a gut feeling. I just knew this was for you.
I think it being an all women's event was critical for Charlotte. And I also appreciated the just inclusion of all the women that were selected because I think over 100 of us applied.
Oh,
So
that's a lot. Yeah.
it's not, you know, it goes without saying that all of us had an important message to bring. Um, but what I will say personally, because I have applied to more since, is it is very unreal to get, when you apply to have it accepted so fast. And I've had rejections and that's okay. I've been invited to apply again next year, but for some of them, there are terms. And so I think aligning the theme to your message um is important. And I think that alignment can lead to broader success, right? So because you remember we did have to pivot. We would have had two very similar talks on that dot that day, and we didn't want that. So I'm glad that the pivot worked, and it did. It anchored my voice, I think, more than the first idea, which is the joy of TED, right? So when you're not selling, you're not pitching a book, you're not pitching a company, and it's just a brand new innovative idea that doesn't exist or in the way you're framing it, that really kind of just opens the doors. But that alignment to theme, I think, is critical. And then the only other tip I would give if you are applying to like university TEDx's is they do have a tendency of wanting alumni.
That's
So kind of a little bit of a lesson learned in that space. But it doesn't mean that can't change, right? Alumni can take many forms and shapes or involvement with the universities as a whole. So kind of leaning into that for 2026 because I would like to land a second one and see what the trust protocol evolves into, because as a book, there's so many more innovative ideas that are pouring out of that one spark that we kind of came up with back in December, January.
Yes. Well, there's 2 TEDx's that are open right now that are tech-based. Apply to those today. And then I will send my good vibes your way. Um, But I love it. So many great tips, right? And I think this episode is going to help anyone who has this as a goal for themselves. I think the big takeaway as well is that if somebody else has done this, that you can do this too. I think a lot of people look at TEDx as something that's for other people. That's for people who have really made it in this kind of area, but I haven't. And then that leads to comparison. But I don't think it's about that. You don't have to be the best speaker. You don't have to be the most successful person on earth to land a TEDx talk. What you do have to have is, you have to be willing to be a professional. You have to be willing to put in the work, put in the practice, put in the effort, show up when you don't want to, right? Work in the dark when there's no applause. You've got to be willing to do that. And then you've got to be willing as well to be coachable because, to your point, you had to totally repivot your idea. So you have to be willing to work with somebody, be coachable, take advice. And then you also have to not give up in the face of failure. If you do get a rejection, it's just redirection. And you might not be like Nia and be so fortunate as to get into the very first one you apply to, but just keep going. If you get a rejection, it's just redirection. Just keep looking, keep applying, and don't give up on your dream at all, right?
No, absolutely.
Mm.
And even if it's not your dream and you're being encouraged, lean into that. Because Tara saw that right away. And we were actually talking about this. Woof, it's the end of 2025. So we were talking about TED for a while before it actually started happening. And it was believing it, right? Very introverted. And a lot of the work I do is behind the scenes.
That's right.
And that's okay. But believing in what others see sometimes can stretch you to exactly where you need to be. And that's my lesson for anybody listening. Because as much as my husband can say, you're great at public speaking, you should be on stages, after 18 years, it's like, right. But let's just keep it low key. It's fine. So, TEDx isn't low key. So, but I don't regret a single day, a single rehearsal. And to the broader point of crap, yeah, take that time and think about it as investing, right? So for every minute you're pouring into yourself and you're pouring into this journey, think about that as the deposit into your bank account, right? So what do you want to do with 1,000 hours? They say to master something, it takes around 10,000 hours, right? Now, okay, $10,000. How are we going to spread that prep out? Maybe it's not doable in 6 months, but how close can you get? And then the closer you are, the better you're going to be and the brighter you're going to shine when you are on that stage, on that dock. And it's your moment to share your idea. So
I love that. I love that. I think it's important, all of this, it's not native. It's not native knowledge, right? This is not something we're born knowing how to do. And it requires somebody in your corner that knows the space, understands it, can help you, can help guide you. But, most of all, keep believing in you, even if you stop believing in yourself, even if you start questioning yourself. It's so important to have those people around you when you're approaching something big like this, like your book, like your TEDx, like all of the amazing things that you have going on. And this is just the beginning. I know that there's more for you in 2026. I'm not going to say what that is.
absolutely.
We're going to
No,
keep that we're going to keep that in the oven for now, but I know there's a lot of things that you have
there's
work.
already a few things that are
I
in
know
the works.
I know
And
these.
the keynote of this TED Talk is probably the biggest that's other than the book that's come out of this entire experience. So, and that's been an interesting journey too. Um, because you knew it.
Yes.
You knew at scale this could be a keynote. And so to get that offer before the end of the year and lock that in is just a blessing, because that'll be post launch, hopefully. If not, it'll be pre launch. But either way, it's the timing of it is really great. And I get nervous because it is the start of something that I don't even think we had fully baked out. We just knew this was the goal. We set the target, we achieved, right? And now we continue to build. And so what that's building into, one is it's bigger than I could have imagined. And faster. Like, it's so much more accelerated than I even mentally had prepared for. But so my other tip of advice is surround yourself with those people that are going to be those force multipliers for you. They're going to encourage you even when you don't have the energy. They're going to remind you of the path, the purpose, what you're doing, and they help keep you focused, because even with all this greatness, everyone still has a day job, right? So whatever that looks like, this is on top of that in some cases. But when you marry it with what you do, then it all just becomes that time to value and deposit kind of conversation that you're putting into yourself, you're putting into the idea, and then you're soundboarding with some of the best people you could have in your life. So, and then to be able to celebrate that every step of the way has been a pure joy. I had mentors come out that day. You were there. Obviously, Kara was there as our amazing curator, but yeah, still very pinch me, because it was just an amazing day. And even the experience leading up to it, it was being coachable. It was leaning in when it was hard. And Brian was trying to get me out of my own head. And you were trying to remind me of those mic drop moments and what to really like anchor in on and focus on, but then pulling it together, right? And not to make people happy, but to ensure that the message was sound and understandable and relatable and got people curious, but not like scared of tech, right? Because what I do can take that kind of weird turn as well. But I think everyone did an amazing job that day. And if you're having issues, I guess, believing in yourself or seeing yourself going in this direction, trust the people you surround yourself with, right? Lean into that. And yeah, you never know what the future will bring, but 2026 is going to be a wild ride, Tara. It's going to be
It's
great.
gonna be fire. Fire. I'm so excited for you. It's all good things. I do want to mention real quick before we wrap up that you anchored yourself in gratitude through this process.
Sure.
And, the GRASP method, obviously, it's something that we talked about on this podcast, but it's something that I use in any type of coaching I'm doing, whether it's TEDx coaching or just, business coaching, life coaching, personal development work that I do. When we start with gratitude, it really anchors us and it allows us to be grateful for the opportunities, because it's really easy when we get something like a TEDx or a book deal to spiral and to get anxious and to say, oh my gosh, I'm not ready. Oh my gosh, there's a million bajillion things to do. But that's where gratitude comes in. Gratitude says, you know what? I received this because I'm worthy, because my message means something, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And then you just take one step of action at a time. And it's nothing to be overwhelmed by. It's something that you're just consistently, persistently working on in a positive way. It really keeps you that positive mindset throughout your journey. So I love the fact that you said that, and that was something that you incorporated into this as well, is the gratitude aspect. And personally, you have completely transformed from the moment I first met you until today. I'm still talking to Nia, but you're a different person entirely. It's truly like the analogy of the butterfly, right? You're completely transformed. How does that feel to be completely transformed? Because I know you feel it too.
I do. And it's echoed. It's uncomfortable. I'm not gonna lie. We're still in that, like, is this real?
Mm-hmm.
And believing it's real. But the more I do, there's two things that happen. The more I'm seen by the leaders that appreciate people like me and thought leadership in the way that I present it. And then the second to that is there are opportunities to clarify what excellence can look like, because I think society affords many ways to capture what that success can be. It's not a one size fits all. It can be unique in nature. And what I'm learning is that's where the real magic is, because there's so many more people like me that have an innovative either idea or approach to getting things done that isn't really the common standard, but it's effective and it works and it's repeatable. And so that's really helped this transformation come to life. And then now we're just in practice of really stepping into that and owning it, but leading with transparency and vulnerability versus that shield of armor that I was kind of taught to don coming out of the military, right? Also equally effective. But depending on what our goal is, maybe not. So this has given me a much more powerful way to just exist, show up, be seen, be heard, be appreciated, which feels good. And then your confidence just naturally lifts over time. I won't lie, like there are other people that may have, differing opinions, and that's okay. The same way I have differing opinions, that's fine. TED may not be for everyone, but I know for me, it has been a multiplier in terms of what I've been able to do for the local area within Charlotte, what I'm able to do for my employer, and what I'm able to do for my family, and just how I show up in my everyday now. Because it's not a one and done exercise if you don't want it to be. And it can really transform, especially that gratitude, the grasping gratitude component, really came into play in the last 6 months when I was drafting that book, because anxiety will creep in. Will anybody read it? Is it too dry? Is it relatable? Right? Doesn't matter the topic of the book. I feel like those are all common anxieties we experience. And the only way to quell those is to be grateful. And then when I would do these exercises of going for a walk, finding my gratitude, and come back the next day, it was like, boom, chapters. So writer's block is a very real thing, along with creative flow. But I found in my journey, and I don't know about anybody else, Tara, but I found it. And then the writer's block alleviated enough for me to actually start being confident enough to draft a book. So I'm excited where
Wow.
this goes. Yeah. But
That's it. That's it. It really works. I promise. It's like it will change your life. Gratitude is your anchor. That's why I call it the foundation of confidence, the foundation for all success in life. It shows you that what you have is enough. And then when you realize that you have enough, that's when your multiples come to you. Your multiples of ideas, your multiples of opportunities, your multiples of income, whatever that looks like for you. So I love this. I love your story. I love this conversation. I love your journey. It's a perfect journey of going from unsure uncertainty to completely owning your story, completely owning your life, your next chapter, and getting at those multiples of success just by saying yes and leaning into your calling. Beautiful. Guys, if this is something that you want to do, if you're TEDx curious, if you are thinking that you have an idea, you want to share it on the stage, you're not sure how to do it, look at Nia's example. If she can do this, You have the power. If I can do this, you have the power. The fact that you're listening to this episode right now tells me this is already written for you. You just have to take that first step and believe in yourself and work with someone who champions your success. We will see you on the next episode. Take care.